All right, everybody, thanks for hanging out. We're joined today by, in my opinion, one of the most creative artists that hip hop has ever generated. We're very, very excited to have him here. So please, won't you welcome MF Doom.
Peace. Hola, how's everybody doing? Good to see y'all.
Thank you for joining us today, sir. How are you?
No doubt, brother. I'm good.
We usually like to start, at least I like to start these things by playing a little bit of music. Last week we had a gentleman by the name of Young Guru here. He was talking about some of his favorite artists and some of his favorite productions and MCs, and he talked quite a bit about you, and he mentioned an album, Food. And I thought for those of us in the room who may not be as familiar as others with your work, that maybe we might hear a little bit of that. Is that cool with you?
Yeah.
All right, so let's start out with that, and we can get into our conversation. So I guess just as a reference, can you talk a little bit about, your process as far as, when you make a song like this?
Yeah, that's a good example to that particular song. Haven't heard it in a while. Sounds good in here. What I usually do when I'm producing a record, I'll come up with the beat first, then the beat will inspire the lyrics, you know what I'm saying? So in that particular example, it's really like the main song. That song defines the record, you know what I'm saying? Title cut, if you will. So I came up with that particular song first, and everything else spawned from there. Just typical joint. I heard the loop first, caught the loop, put the drums to it, polished it up with the 808. Just I don't really overdo it too much. I like to just keep it close to the original as possible. Leave something for the imagination, but enough to get the translation across, and then just write to it. Keep it simple. You know what I mean?
Now, was that something you sampled off of TV or video? Is music? Or
yeah, it came from an old VHS copy, like that my man sent me, like, you know what I mean.
And what kind of equipment are you using on something like this, or is equipment relevant to you?
Well, it really, what you use to record, really, I don't think is that important. But just for reference, I used the MPC 2000 XL, I believe. At that time, like I say, the medium that we record onto is not that much of a big deal. It depends on the quality. Like, there's a way to keep the quality where you wouldn't be able to tell if it was 2-inch or Pro Tools, or sometimes you could record something onto Pro Tools and coming out of something that's an analog machine, and it'll sound like you might have put it to cassette first, So, I try to keep it as clean as possible, though, for what I was using. I mainly try to just capture the way you hear it. I try to capture that same sound, no matter what. Yeah.
And how long does it take to do the kind of audio collage? That sort of sets up the track. Got a few different things going on here at the intro of this song.
Yeah, it varies. It takes it's an ongoing process. Sometimes months of gathering pieces. Sometimes I leave it alone for a few months. And it'll come back to my mind. I'll go back to it and find that one last piece that it needed, you know what I mean? And then when it's done, I'll know it's done by just it'll just be full. But I mean, I could work on it forever. I'm still finding little samples and whatnot I can add to that. But I pretty much know when it's done, when it feels like a complete, a complete piece.
It doesn't always have to follow a complete linear storyline, does it? Or, do you sit there and go, well, I need to find a voice that says this type of line, and then you'll put it in the back of your head and look for it later. I mean,
yeah, that's pretty much as it progresses. That's how it ends up being. At first, it's kind of like if the piece is telling me the story. So I don't really know the story yet. I find like one or two things that reference a subject matter, a topic. You know what I'm saying? And then what happens is, it will start telling me more and more. Then I'll join the conversation towards the end of the process, and I might need that one cherry on top of that one word. But if I find it, once I start looking for one last word, that's when it starts getting tricky. I gotta all right, it's done.
So I guess this is so much a part of your performance, your persona, not only sonically, but obviously, physically, appearance-wise. Maybe there's some folks in here who don't fully understand. Can you explain a little bit about the different personas? There's MF Doom. There's also Victor Vaughn. There is also King Ghidra. Can you break that down a little bit for folks?
Yeah, well, the idea of having different characters to you know, different characters, really just to get the storyline across. Coming from one particular character all the time makes to me the story boring. I get that mainly from novels and that style of writing, you know what I mean? Or movies, you know what I'm saying, where there's multiple characters to carry the storyline. It all might be written by one writer, you know what I mean, or directed by one director, but there's multiple characters in order to, you need it, you know what I'm saying? So the more the better with me. This way I could come from one point of view, another point of view. They might even disagree on certain things. I think a lot of times in hip hop, especially, artists get kind of pigeonholed into being like if you're the guy, and that's it's kind of limiting in a way. So I look at it like I'm a writer, like the same way with the skits. Like have the record tell a story. You know what I'm saying? Like have little intervals where it's like cut scenes. You know what I'm saying? To where yeah, to me everything just flows better when I got multiple characters to portray
Right.
the story.
Well, how would you define Doom's character then? What's his perspective? What are his characteristics?
Yeah, the character Doom in particular, he's more like the old school, OG, old timer villain. Like he's a typical villain that you have in any story where a lot of people misunderstand him. But he's always looked at as the bad guy, but he really got a heart of gold. You know what I'm saying? And he's for the children, and it's like a Robin Hood kind of character.
So he's a sympathetic villain.
Yeah, loved by the people, but then the powers that be may not really get along with how he get down. You know what I'm saying?
And what about Victor Vaughn, another character?
Yeah, Vic is similar, but he's younger. He's more like a younger, like say 18, 19-year-old young whippersnapper, think he know it all kind of, a lot of times he disagree with Doom, but still he looks up to Doom. Yeah.
And what about King Ghidra?
Ghidra's an interesting character. You know what I mean? The whole direction of Ghidra is like, okay, he's not even from the Earth, you know what I'm saying? He's from outer space, And he channels the information to Doom in order for Doom to produce and whatnot. So Doom is he gets the message from Ghidra. So Ghidra is not even on Earth. He's more of like an etheric being, you know what I'm saying?
And what physical form would Ghidra take then?
Ghidra straight reptilian. Like he would be like a 300-foot, three-headed dragon, golden, like, it's actually from the whole Toho Godzilla films. So he's it's just a villain theme, you know what I mean? The bad guy. Ghidra's that classic bad guy, and even in those films, like, strong, real strong, where they had to jump him at the end in order to get him. They always end up somehow chasing him away though, right? Because the whole hero thing, the hero gotta win. But if you really look at it, Ghidra is really stronger than all of them, you know what I'm saying? But he's still that oddball, you know what I'm saying?
So why is Doom then more of your dominant persona, or maybe not dominant, but the one that is more on the forefront? Is it because you've said that Doom, in some respects, is doing Ghidra's work, right? He's more like a emissary or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So why Doom? Why is Doom in the forefront as opposed to these other characters?
Well, I think it's just for right now. What I had a chance to let the public hear, and it just happened to end up that right now in this time frame, Doom happened to be the one that's in the forefront. But I mean, in the next 12 months, Ghidra might take the stage again, and Doom might fall back for another 2 years or so. You know what I mean? So it varies. It's an ongoing story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I guess obviously the mask is a huge part of Doom. Can you just, for those who are new to this, can you explain a little bit of why Doom wears the mask? Why he's only seen with the mask?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the whole mask thing, really, all right, it's a time in hip hop where things, from my point of view, started going more to what things look like opposed to what things sound like. You know what I mean? Before, we ain't know what MCs look like until we went to the party and seen them rocking, you know what I'm saying? Or seen them, most of the time you see them rock on at a show before you even knew, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, before video, pre-video, you really was going off the sound of the record. Straight skills. See, once it started getting more publicized, and it started being hip hop started being more of a money making thing. Then you get these corporate ideas where you want to put what it looks like to sell what it sounds like. But we dealing with music, so what I did was I said, all right, look, I'm gonna come with the angle of it don't matter what I look like, it don't matter what the artist look like. It's more what the artist sound like. So the mask really represents the whole like to rebel against the trying to sell the product as a human being. You know what I mean? It's more of a sound. So and at the same time, something different. You know what I'm saying? And it fits with the theme of the rebel, the villain, where to him he don't care about the fame and all that shit. That shit is with no consequence. You know what I mean? It's more of the message of what's being said. So I think it helps people focus more on what's being said. And it's still entertaining. It's still like the theater, and it has the appeal of something that could be considered entertaining, but that message is still there. That villain represents anybody. Anybody in here could wear the mask and be the villain, male, female, any race, so-called race. You know what I mean? It's about where you coming from your heart. You know what I'm saying? Like what is the message? What you got to say? That's mainly why I chose to bring the mask into the fold.
Now, can you talk a little bit about just, you just mentioned your first sort of encounters with hip hop a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about, how you got into the music initially?
I think it was just from what it was. My first experience with hip hop, hearing the sound that we call hip hop now, that could be considered hip hop. It would have to be just listening to the radio. At the time, it was WBLS, like Frankie Crocker. He'd be playing joints like Grover Washington Jr. And it just got that feel. Certain records just got the feel. You hear the break, oh, good times, chic, good times. You hear it, even if they's not being spun. You hear it in there, right? Then at the time we was young, we was like, I think I was like 10, 11 years old, something like that. And we used to, go down the block, and a lot of our peoples had older brothers. So this is back when it was two turntables and cats had afros, and we used to look up to them like, oh, go peeking down in the basement, like, oh, what they doing, But I would never be able to really get on the wheels until it must have been like a year after, and they finally invited us down to try to just get on. You know what I mean? So that's my first experience with what we would call hip hop now. Tramp, Otis Redding, spinning, just seeing how the record feel when you spin it back, how the fader feel when you hit it. You know what I mean? So yeah.
And KMD started out as a graffiti crew?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was really like a crew. Basically, back then we used to have crews that was just crews, you know what I mean? That would listen to music, maybe be artists in general, breakdancing, anything that was like, at the time, we didn't really categorize it like that. Anything that was fun. A crew that you would walk home from school with, and that's just the crew, and then everybody in the crew might add one thing to it, bring a different angle to it. So graffiti was like something that we just did, doodling and art in general, So yeah, it turned more into a graffiti crew first, and then the breakdancing came into it as that became more popular, And then music was always there, hip hop was always there as far as the music aspect. And then, it just turned out the hip hop part, sound wise, music wise, got more popular. And it became to where we was making tapes and took it from there. Fun times back then, You could tell like there's a lot of humor and a lot of spontaneity, Things got a lot. Nowadays, I think things kind of got more serious with hip hop to where it's like, it needs more of that. Wouldn't y'all agree? A little bit of humor, you know what I'm saying? It adds more of a, to me, that's how it was back then. And it was comfortable. It's not as tense, so everybody's not so hung up on who's the best. And, it's more of a fun thing. So, yeah, man.
But, that said, I think it's interesting because there is a lot of humor and a lot of looseness in a song like this. But yet, you guys are actually saying some kind of profound stuff too, And I think that was one of the trademarks, more or less, or is one of the trademarks of what you do. Can you talk a little bit about Zev Love X? This was you before MF Doom. What's the relationship between Zev and Doom?
Well, really, I would say they both really exist simultaneously. So it's not like a change from one to the other one. It's more like one of them came more to the forefront now. You know what I mean? Like these just shifting positions. Like this goes back to the whole character thing. the Zevil of X still exists somewhere as that character. You just don't hear him too much right now. He's just playing the background out of the story, kind of like. So there's a lot of similarities, you know. But I made it to where I needed another way to get a different point across. You know what I'm saying? A more, I think the Doom character is a little more serious. You know what I'm saying? More serious than Zev. A lot of people describe it as dark. I would say it's just a deeper hue, like a kind of more reflective. Like he thinks deeper into things. You know what I mean?
You know, the other thing with Zev and the KMD era, you know, not to stay on it too long, but also represented something, you know, that was very prevalent at the time, which is 5% Nation and hip hop at the time, and you know those things. You and Brand Nubian dubbed yourselves the God Squad. You know, it was a very interesting time for all that stuff to be so prevalent. Any reflections on that now, looking back?
Well, yeah, you know, really a lot of influence to put information and to get like different aspects of the culture into the music comes from influences like I would say like PE. And when they was, you know, we was heavily influenced by PE, BDP, and they would speak on different things that you wouldn't really hear anywhere else besides maybe like an old gathering, like you know, went to a gathering with an uncle or something like that. Where you got the old timers sitting around just talking about back then. It's something that you would hear more from family members or like through passing of stories, like culturally, you know. So in order to keep that alive and to keep these messages out there for the youth, you know, we put it in the records. You know, it was kind of like unintentionally, kind of like just to be like PE, kind of like, you know, like if, oh, what he say? You know, oh, I remember that. What can I add on and drop a jewel about? You know, or to be like how KRS used to come with different information that you wouldn't necessarily hear.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So KMD gets dropped from Elektra. This album doesn't come out, and then, you know, something obviously even more tragic happens. Your brother passes away. How did you cope with that? What got you through this time in your life?
Yeah, actually, how it happened was we almost finished. We was just about done with the record, and then the accident happened. You know what I'm saying? Where Sub lost his life and whatnot. God bless. And then I finished the record. You know, I still went ahead and finished the record despite, you know, because it only was a little more to do. So, you know, just for I mean, I'm going to finish it. One of us is going to finish it anyway. If it happened to me, he would have finished it. You know what I'm saying? But then that's when they decided to sever the agreement with us. You know what I'm saying? Like in that order kind of thing. So, I mean, a lot of things were going on at that time, you know. So the way I dealt with it, I just kept it moving. You know what I mean? At the time, it just seemed like another thing, another obstacle to kind of like maneuver around. Or, you know, I had my mother and everybody. I had to like kind of be the one to be strong at the time. You know what I'm saying? I'm the oldest out of all of us. He's my brother, younger than me, one younger. So I had to kind of like just take the reins at that point. I couldn't really think about it too much, you know, especially with the whole thing with the deal being different. You know, had to kind of like regroup and figure things out. So the way I dealt with it, just like how we deal with it, like keep it moving. You know what I mean?
You wound up resurfacing, but a few years later with some singles with your friend Bobito on his label. You were trying to keep it moving. You were trying to maintain, obviously, during that time, that interim. But yes, just on the day to day, what was that? What was life like during those years for you?
It's almost like how everything was before we started getting into the whole record. I mean, professionally into the game. Back to being a civilian, you know, so to say, where you don't have a deal, so it's like you gotta figure out ways to make ends meet, you know, but still doing music, you know what I'm saying? Just like before we had the deal. So it wasn't too unfamiliar, you know what I mean? Music is really what, now that I think back to it, music and having equipment and always just finding a place that you could just play your music and do your thing, whether it's my aunt's basement or, you know, wherever I could get something plugged in at and plugged into, you know, at the time it was the FZ1 and the FZ10 was the rack mount version, a sampler made by Casio. So we had that, we still had our equipment, so found a way to plug it in and continue on. So now that I think about it, music was this thing that really kept us and kept me going through the whole thing. By continuing to just do the craft, they caught the ear of Bobito. You know what I'm saying? He's always been there as like this my partner, one of my good friends from back when we first signed with Elektra. I met him through Pete and Serge actually. He was working at Def Jam at the time. You know, so me and Bob was always cool. You know, so he noticed I was still doing music. I'll play some tapes for him. You know, go kick it with him here and there. And he was just starting his label up, or had the idea of this label that he was going to start. You know, so he asked me to do a couple of joints if you know if he could put out a couple of joints, and that's what kind of started it. You know, that respawned the whole thing. But I think I would have still been doing it even now if I never had a chance to come out professionally. You know what I mean?
Hmm. So at this time, did you come up on your own, reemerging as MF Doom, or is it something you discussed with anybody at that point? Because you were Zevla Vex with KMD for these singles with Bobito circa 1997 for his
Right.
independent label Fondle.
Yeah, see, right after we finished the album Black Bastards, even while we was working on Black Bastards, me and Sub were both gonna do solo records respectively. So I was gonna do the Doom thing since back then, and he was gonna come out with his joint as another character, you know. And really, I just continued on with the ideas I had in my head, and I developed the Doom character and developed the songs and more of the concept around the character, and until it just culminated to enough that when Bob heard it, he got it. You know what I mean? And you know, the style was different. I came with a different lyrical style, a different. I try to really make it distinctly different from the Zevil of X character, like how you would have the characters in the book, like that different, different strategy. Like I say, it's about what it sounds like more than what it looks like. A lot of the experiences in KMD and with the, that's when people doing videos and everything was about, so we got a taste of that and how it could backfire on you. You know what I mean? So it kind of made me go back to the lab and regroup. That's where I really developed a lot of the Doom character. You know what I'm saying?
So these singles, Operation Doomsday, considered one of the, essential albums from this sort of independent hip hop movement in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. The thing that I always observed from some of your singles, some of your work from this period is, this is when hip hop really got super divided in terms of where your loyalties were, at least from a listener's perspective. It's like if you were snapping your fingers in the club listening to Bad Boy records, you were supposedly representing one sensibility. And if you had a backpack on and you were bobbing your head like this and, in a cipher or whatnot, you were representing something different. Yet, the thing that's always been interesting to me is when I hear some of these singles and some of these songs you put together, you're actually using some of these same reference points. You're just flipping it in a different way. Some of your songs are referencing Atlantic Starr or James Ingram or Steely Dan, or things that are would not be out of place being used in these other music that's being made that's more popular. You're using it in a different way. I just wonder what your opinion is of me putting that idea out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that differs is the recording techniques and recording styles. Like that's what would be making it. I think that's what where the line is. Like they grew up probably listening to the same things we grew up listening to, except their production methods and I guess the direction they wanted to go in was more of a polished. I would say, I don't want to speak for them and whatnot, but it's like a polished sound. You can tell by how it sounds. It's like almost aiming for a certain goal, like as far as sonically, and selling records wise too, to make it a more pretty product. You know what I'm saying? Where we might be using the same sources, the same references, but I'm keeping it to where it's like, yo, it's vinyl. That shit might have dust on it. It might have crackles in it. I can't get the CD, so I'm gonna still make the beat. I'm gonna use the one I first made. I'm gonna use the first set of vocals. I had a plug-in mic that wasn't maybe the best mic, but that's how I did the vocals, and that's how I'm keeping it rugged. You know what I'm saying? So, and we still use the same methods to this day. Like however you do it, that's how you do it. It's done. Bow. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of that, and it's an attitude too, that became part of the formula and methodical way we did joints. It still exists, you know what I'm saying?
This also set off a period for you just being super, super prolific. I mean, after disappearing for a while, maybe not right after Operation Doomsday, but definitely a few years after that, you were, there was a Doom record that was coming out every week on maybe 10 different labels. What was your approach? What was your mentality going into that era of things?
It's more out of necessity at the time and out of the popularity. All right, see, like I say, we learned a lot from the first run going through the game and having, as far as the business side, having too many hands in the pot, and not having as much freedom as you could have. Once you learn it, that's when you make the updates, you know what I'm saying? So one of the things that we did was made sure we had control over the entities that, we wrote as a control over the business and, not to where, okay, sign a deal where you can only make records for one company, do that out. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole independent movement going on, so you can make a deal with somebody like how I did with Bobito. Like he's man, make a deal. Okay, do a one-off record, but it's not confining where all right, your next record got to be with me. It's not all like corporate like that. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was better for both of us like that. You know what I'm saying? We both weren't tied down. Just confined like that. So what it freed up was it made it possible to solicit work to other people. You know what I'm saying? So as much work as you can do, now I have the freedom to put it out. You know what I mean? So with the success of the Fondlem stuff, other cats who want me to do maybe a verse here or do a record for them. So and many people was coming to me. It's like I'm like, all right, yo, I'll do it. I'll do. I had to get back up and get this bread. You know what I'm saying? So I had a family at the time, a son and whatnot. So I had to make sure he was fed and everything was straight. So this is where hip hop started being back like a business where I could sustain and take care of my family. Any business that would come to us, we would take it and do it. So in the outside, it would seem like we're doing a lot of records on purpose, maybe just to come out and have a lot of records out, which really wasn't the goal. It was more like as many people that needed a record, I would just do the record whether or not they put it out or not. You know what I'm saying? But I guess on the outside, it looked like I was just doing a lot of records, which is cool though. It worked both ways, good.
Were you ever concerned about quality control during this time? Did you ever feel overextended from doing all this stuff?
Nah, not at all. Like I say, I would be doing the records anyway. Like so, whether I just did them and kept them on my shelf and nobody ever heard them, or somebody will come and want to put it out. And so, see, I got the formula from Bob. If we just put the record out, no picture cover, nothing, the people, 'cause the DJs will buy a white label record and just play it. So once the DJs play that, people hear it. Then they either like it or they don't like it. So if they do like it, they got to go ask the DJ, yo, what is that? Or they try to go look and see what the label is, or they'll go looking for the record opposed to trying to force feed somebody a record like, yo, we got this new record out. We did it the opposite way, where it's up to the people what they like. So this way, it brings people come to you for looking for something that they already feeling. So this way, it cuts a lot of the, you don't get the bullshit records like that. You get quality records. You know what I mean? So if I'm doing a bunch of records, people know where to come to get the quality that they're looking for. So they'll tend to come. You got anything else? Or do you got? So this way, this is how we started putting out a lot of records like that. That's why I feel like it's not really. It's not really like an overextended thing. It's more of a niche thing. It's like certain people, like certain things. It might be thrift store clothes. You know what I'm saying? That's their style. So they'll go to the thrift store to get that instead of going to Macy's to get whatever's supposed to be the high end shit. It's a certain quality that people look for, that we provide that same quality.
How did you and Madlib decide to work together?
Yeah, I got a call one day from Peanut Butter Wolf up there at Stone Store. Wolf was a good friend of mine, big up Wolf. And he mentioned this cat Madlib, but I wasn't familiar with his work at the time. But I guess he heard some of my stuff and he was reaching out to me so that we could do a record together, like, and want to give me some beats and whatnot. So at the time, it was the same time when I was doing records for a lot of different companies and whatnot. They offered to fly me out to LA, so it sounded like a good thing. Flew out there, met these cats, cool, you know what I'm saying? Good spirited, good hearted people and real record diggers, like, you know what I'm saying, beat maker, same kind of vision and how we did records is the same, it's real similar. Still unique though. He had his unique style. So that's really how it started. He reached out. Ever since then, that's been my man. You know what I mean?
So what was a typical day like with you and Madlib trying to put this album together? Or were there typical days?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could put it in a nutshell. You know what I'm saying? It was more like, okay, I'm trying to finish the record so I get back home. You know, I'm staying in LA. I'm trying to get back to my children and whatnot. So I'm working as fast as I possibly can without sacrificing the quality. You know, so but he's working too like that. Like I would hardly see him. We're in the same house. He's always in the bomb shelter, and I'm always up on the deck writing, right? And then he'll give me another CD. I get the CD, and I'm writing. You know what I'm saying? And then he's back in the bomb shelter, so I would hardly speak to him. Like we hardly ever, you know, we might stop and he'll burn one and we'll listen to the beat and then that's it. And then the next 2 days I probably won't see him. But then I was getting mad work done. And then at the end of the like week, we'll listen to the shit after the end of the week and be like, all right, you know, I might let him know, yo, here's the angle I'm thinking about. All I need is a verse and chorus on this one and it's done. And then that's it. You know what I'm saying? We hardly spoke really. It's more through like telepathy and like we spoke really through the music. Like he'll hear the joint and that's like my conversation with him. Then I'll hear a beat and that's like what he's saying to me. You know what I mean? Like it's real bug. It's still to this day that's how we do it.
I want to ask you a little about, you always describe yourself as a writer. Even though you're an MC, you're a producer, you've also said, I'm a writer, you know, and the craft of what you do. I think, you know, it's easy to get lost amongst, you know, the records and the personality of the records and the mask and everything else. You know, this craft of wordplay, of putting words together in an interesting way. This song, for instance, you say things like, groovy dude, not to prove or be rude, but this stuff is like what you might put on movie food. So obviously it rhymes, as most rap does, but, you know, how do you decide like when to say something by not saying something? If you know what I mean. And I wonder if you might address that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, as I'm writing it, I'm also thinking of it from a listener point of view. So I try to make it to where I can catch myself off guard. Like you wanna keep the story interesting. Like as soon as somebody thinks they know what you're gonna say, that's part of the essence of rhyming. Is to keep everybody kind of off guard a little. So I take that and I stretch it with these different things. Like leave one word blank. You know, knowing that the listener is following along and will fill in that blank, like how you know I'm following along and will fill in the blank. But always put the word that you would least expect or what they think might be there is not there, but it still makes sense in another way. It keeps the story interesting, you know what I'm saying? Like where you can match wits with the, you know, it's almost like keeping a good conversation with the listener where you can match wits with them. It makes it more fun to me. So I try to keep it as entertaining for somebody else who will be listening to it down the line even and like, you know, really puts a sense of longevity to the record as well to where you know you never know what the dude's gonna say, so you want to hear it again and again, and then once you do get it, you want to pass it on to a friend. It's like a good book. Again, that's why I phrase it as a writer. Like you know, I look at this. It means written. I got the notebooks to prove it. Man, you know, there's a lot of writing. Like more writing I thought that I'll ever be doing. You know what I'm saying? So, and it takes thought and a lot of like, you know, you got novels that are put together loosely, and even got tabloids opposed to like credible newspapers. You know what I mean? So, in the same way, you got different hip hop, like in the sense of rhyming. That's some of it is just you know fun, like here and there thrown together, not as crafty, I would say. And then you got the real crafty good stuff. So I try to make that quality good stuff, you know what I'm saying? Where you're gonna be like, wow, it's a classic book, you know what I'm saying? Well written, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Around 2006 to the last album you did, there were moments when there was a certain amount of unpredictability. You were very prolific, but then there was also some inactivity. You know, what was going on in that time?
I think it's more like, you know, I was still doing work, but I kind of laid off it a little bit, just to concentrate on family and like, you know, other children on the way, and you know, I just kind of took some time off really for family and like just to get away from it for a second. It started being like where you know I don't necessarily want to do one thing for too long. It gets to where it gets boring and kind of overwhelming, and you want to take a step back and just reflect. So it's really like that kind of thing. I didn't think it was that noticeable from the outside, though. I figured it was enough work out there for people to still absorb, and you know, and it comes to a point where I need to get more information. And as I study and I got to do some like to give the information. I need information, so I would do things like just leave it alone for a second and just observe the world, and so I'll have more things to say. I think a lot of times people expect us to just be constantly talking. I'm the kind of cat I'll lay back. You know what I mean? And the conversation ain't always about what I gotta say. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's time to listen. So that was more like the listening time. You know what I mean?
Actually, I think this is where we're gonna have to wrap it. You have anything you want to say to these young, impressionable minds in conclusion?
Yeah, what I would say? Follow your heart. That's the number one rule. Follow your heart. Like, a lot of people might not see your vision yet. You know what I mean? People might call you crazy and think it won't make sense. Follow your heart and just follow it all the way through. And that's when you'll see you making new ground and people will appreciate it later on. You know what I mean? Never try to do something to impress the next man, the next woman. Like, it's really about what you see and what you have inside. Everybody's unique individual here. You know what I mean? So you have something to contribute. So whatever it is, follow that and bring it out and share at the table with all of us. You know what I mean? And I also have to say, like, just thanks for all y'all support. You know what I mean? It's people like y'all that have me continue to do it and I see it as valuable when you guys show appreciation. I'm like, wow, somebody out there actually listening to know what my crazy ass is thinking about. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that. I have to say thank you guys.
Well, let's say thanks to MF Doom, everybody.